Welcome back into the Ohio MMA podcast. I am your host, David McKinney. Joining me on today's episode, undefeated amateur fighter Alekzander Hazelwood. What's up, Alekzander?
Hey, David. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to have you on the podcast as you're returning to the cage here in a couple of weeks. Ohio Combat League 32 taking on Jade Batross. I know that it's interesting. It's a little step up in competition for you. Your first two fights, you faced debut guys, and then been up to that has 4 fights and won his first 3 fights. So how you feeling about the matchup, and how's camp going?
I'm super excited for the matchup, actually. I'm excited for the step up. It's a good test, and I think a good performance here will be a statement win. Put everyone kind of on notice. Camp's been going pretty good. We've been pushing really hard, preparing to go 9 minutes of a hard fight, as Jade has in his past 2. So we're just getting ready kind of for his pace and kind of for the full 9 minutes.
Yeah, and you, I know you're training. You mentioned training camp. You're training at Ronin Training Center, and definitely a deep camp there. You train under Josh Williams and Ryan Benedetto. And I was interested in, I always like to ask people, who, because you guys have so many people at your camp. You told me before, I think it was before your debut fight, that you train a lot with Ethan Shirk, who's another up and coming guy, but Asher Frederick, and then Mark Antonelli, who are both kind of the lighter weight guys. And of course, Mark is a pro at your weight class. So, what's it like having guys that are, all different experience levels, but then also being, basically around the same weight class as you to be able to train with?
It's great. It's great to have so many different looks in the gym too. And, I got training partners that are way better than me, training partners that are my level, and training partners that kind of, I can teach things and kind of give me that confidence. So it's a good environment to be around so many guys. And training with them, they have all the advice in the world. It's a good feeling. I feel really at home there. Everyone kind of treats me like a little brother, so it's good to have all those good guys around me.
Yeah, and I know you did you come from a wrestling background, and you also did some jiu-jitsu, but what made you decide to make the jump into fighting MMA?
It's always been the goal. I always had the age thing. Starting training when I was super young, and then there's kind of just that weird 2-year wait when I did become of age. But this was always the goal. MMA was always the goal when I was grappling, doing wrestling. I didn't even really like the wrestling. I just knew I had to do it. So it's always been my goal.
Yeah, and one thing, it was a little hard to kind of see in your first fight because it went so fast. It was 16 seconds. The guy checked a leg kick, and I don't know if he injured his leg or whatever. But the second fight was really interesting in watching a fighter who, I know you're only 20 years old, and in your second fight in the stand-up, it seemed like you had such a comfort level in there, and it looked like you were just sparring, and a guy who had a lot more than 1 or 2 fights under your belt. Where does that come from? I know that in talking with Josh, that's a lot of times the hardest thing to get a fighter to do is to be comfortable in there, especially in the stand-up where you're like, hey, there's the possibility of being knocked out, right? But where does that comfort level come from you in your fights, especially so early on?
Just from being a kid, my dad was always kind of real heavy on mindset, being calm in dangerous situations. And, we grew up kind of fighting and learning how to fight. So that was implemented into me since I was 5 years old. Like, I have memories of just being in situations that were really bad grappling, and my dad just kind of like telling me the way out of it is to be calm, and that's just the best way to be. It's like water, real calm, real smooth, and it allows me to think. It's like I am sparring on a Saturday at the gym. It's just I'm in tune, and I feel like being calm and kind of just doing little mental things before the fight kind of takes that all away, takes that nervousness away.
And I know you have 4 brothers. I'm sure growing up learning how to fight, you had to. Are you the youngest, the oldest, or where are you in the rank?
I am the middle child.
Okay.
Yep. So
I'm
I got
5.
divorced.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so definitely, you had some brothers you look up to, and then some where you're like, man, you're gonna pay for for what my older brothers did to me, right?
Yeah, just like in training camp. Just like in training camp.
Um, but yeah, so I know in your first couple of fights, you got a finish in both of them. Your first one you won. It was I don't know if it was technically a verbal submission or whatever, but the second one was a submission. You won with a 10-finger guillotine, and I know Josh Williams loved to teach that. And you actually said that's how you thought you were going to win the fight. Did you kind of just visualize that, or you were just working on that a lot, and like, or did you see something where you thought you knew that was going to happen, or what made you call that out?
I was real confident in the skill gap in that one, and I was confident I could kind of take it wherever I wanted to. So kind of having that like stylistic, unique submission, I feel like that was something that I called early on that kind of like showed people, mostly people in my circle at the gym, like, yeah, I can fight just how I practice. I'm calm in there. So and not rushing it either. Like I went for it in the first round, I didn't get it. I broke with strikes, and I found it when it was available. So
Yeah, and then you have two finishes already. Is that something where you're like, man, I got to make from the mindset of obviously you always want to finish the fight, but is that something where you're like, I want to make sure I'm finishing the fights, or do you want to try to like, man, maybe one or two of these amateur fights, I want to make sure I can go 3 rounds just so I make sure that I have the cardio, or like, what's the mindset around that?
um so I don't, it doesn't matter how you win, obviously, but I just like to be entertaining. I like people to remember what they saw when I fight. Um, a lot of guys, I'll remember a fight and I'll ask someone about it and they'll be like, I didn't watch that, and they did. And I just don't want that to be me. I want when they hear my name, them to remember if they seen me or not. So I just like putting on entertaining performances.
Yeah, that's always something too. I mean, I watch, especially around Ohio, probably just about as probably more fights than just about anybody else. I think I try to watch every single fight in the state, and it's like, man, there's when a guy stands out and you remember him, it's like that. There's only a couple of times a year where you really remember a fighter, and maybe a couple times a card, and then a couple times a year you're like, man, I remember that guy. I want to make sure I watch him again. So that's definitely an important thing, man, when you're watching people who are scouting and things like that, and and also just for the fans. I mean, the people pay to show up to go there and watch you fight, and you want to make sure that hey, when I got another fight, they're going to want to come buy tickets again the next time. Like that, you're not being a boring fighter.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. The pressure of everyone paying to see me. It's like I don't want to waste their money. So and yeah, just like you said, I want them to come back. So definitely, like after the second one, a lot of people who missed that fight because of the quickness of the first one. They were like, the next one will definitely be there. So it definitely helps out.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're going. Your first two fights were in Columbus, and then your next fight is in Newark, which isn't too far of a drive, but you're actually right in your opponent's backyard. You feel like a little bit of going into your opponent's backyard is going to give you a little bit of a different feel in this one. I mean, you seem like you have a pretty big fan base. Either way, I know definitely multiple people on the stream, and you heard people chanting your name for the last fight. So it's like less than an hour drive, but still going into his backyard. I feel like you got to feel like that's a little bit of a different mindset going in there, right?
Yeah, I'm expecting the crowd to be a little more loud for him this time. Last time it was definitely in my favor, so that's something that I'm a little not nervous about, but uh, I'm excited. I'm excited to see how that is, because I know it's going to happen. And fighting all the time, I'm going to go, probably across the country and fight guys. So I might as well get used to it, now. So
Yeah, and you've had a pretty quick, start to your career. I think you made your debut in May, and then you had your second fight in June and October. Now October, or November will be your third fight. Are you planning on staying pretty busy? Obviously injuries and things like that can happen, but are you planning on getting 6, 7 fights in a year, or what's the game plan? Behind that. I know your first two fights, it didn't seem like you took a lot of damage, but is that the plan to stay that active?
yeah, I told myself I would take time off and I wasn't gonna fight again, but it's hard. It's hard, especially after you get a nice performance and you don't take damage. You definitely want to feel it again as soon as possible. So Yeah, I plan to stay active. I like the feeling. I like the camp. I like everything. I like being disciplined, even though sometimes I lack. I I like it. I like it all. So I plan to stay active. Hopefully, and there's requirements how many fights you need before you're pro. So I hope to get that requirement out the way as soon as possible.
Yeah, and looking ahead too, I know you're 2-0 now, but is something like amateur titles, is that something that motivates you in the next couple of fights coming up, or not thinking about that at all?
For sure. I've been thinking about that since I debuted. It's always the goal to go for, be the best. You got to beat the best. So, I've had my eyes on guys that are way out of my league for a while now.
So you look at the rankings and things like that, or just
Yeah. Yeah, I look.
watching fights?
Yeah, look, I watch fights. I do my homework.
Yeah, I was. It's funny, on Tapology, the rankings, and I post the rankings, and the people are like, at first, like, I don't look at them, but then that's always the number one post interaction and the number one post views and stuff like that I get on
Yeah, they look. They look.
yeah, and I know sometimes a lot of people, but a lot of people give crap about the rankings, but it really truly is dependent on who you fight, right? So it has nothing to do with oh, this guy turned this fight down or whatever. It's who you fought, their record, how you fought them, or how you won, and then how long ago it was. And that's all that takes into account. And it is interesting seeing like where guys that you can look at like, hey, well, this guy's like 7-0, but he's sixth. Then there's guys ahead of him, but then you start to look at the guy's record and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you haven't fought anybody. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I was definitely take a look at the rankings, and they're always, I know, trying to fine tune them as well. But yeah, so you're, like I said, 4 or 5 months into your fighting career right now. What's the goal? Like, let's say we're looking at a year from now. What are we going to be looking back and saying Alekzander Hazelwood did this in the last year?
I want to get some good finishes, and I want to become a pro, by, a year and a half. I want to get paid for it. And yeah, I'm around a lot. I surround myself with a lot of those guys. Like most of my teammates are pros. So if, you are who you hang around with. So hopefully I just get myself to where they are.
Yeah, I've had a lot of the Ronin fighters on the podcast, and it's interesting seeing, the gym has been around for a while, but it's different, like iterations, almost like generations of fighters. And now you've got like a lot of the fighters that are right before you that all kind of came up as amateurs together, and now they're all pros. Max Metzger and Asher and Skylar Bray and Melvin Harris and all those people. And then now you're kind of on the next level where you're like, you've got a handful of guys coming out that are dangerous fighters. Do you look at that and like, man, it's cool being part of kind of the next generation of Ronin?
Yeah, you only evolve better. So I can't imagine where I'm going to be when I'm the age of those older guys. And there's even guys coming in that are 15, 16 years old, that are going to be dangerous, in the next few years. So it's the potential is just rising. The skill pool is always getting better.
Yeah, and the last question I got for you, man, I was talking with Melvin. We were doing commentary for the last one. We got to get you a nickname. Those
Yeah.
kicks, man. The your kicks are nasty too. That's something that like you don't see a lot from an amateur, like especially throwing body kicks that are nasty. And your first one was a leg kick, and you stopped the guy. But that's we get maybe something to deal with kicks.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't throw a lot of kicks in sparring. I'm real hands heavy, and it yeah, it's hard to throw a kick in sparring too, as hard as you can, and not pull on it. At least for me. So yeah, I don't know about the nickname. It's hard, but I want to have something perfect for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Maybe after this one we'll find something.
yeah. No, I always joke with fighters like I'm trying to give people nicknames, but I'm so bad at it. Like you don't want a nickname from me. So, but yeah, man. November 9th, a couple weeks out. Anybody you want to thank, mention, sponsors, any of that fun stuff?
Yeah, my whole team, man. Of course, my coach Ryan Benedetto, my dad, my mom, and Asher Shock and Rock Frederick. He's been helping me out a lot with this camp with a lot of mental stuff. He hasn't been in the state. He's out in Vegas, but he's been helping me, staying on, making sure I'm pushing myself, and just, having an experienced fighter like that, we go through some mental things, and he helped me out with that a lot. And same with Mark Antonelli, man. He puts a lot of extra effort into me. But all the guys at Ronin, they make me better every day. So all the love for them. And I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah, Asher is a whole other animal, man. He is a very unique guy, and his mindset is so interesting. He's such a cerebral guy, and the way that he looks at it, and all he thinks about is fighting. You're like, man,
Yeah, that's him. That's really
yeah,
him. That's not a persona or nothing. That is really him.
yeah. It's interesting talking to him because you're like, it's a little intense, and you're like, oh man, I'm just like, we're trying to be casual, but he's in that mindset like 24/7, which is very interesting. I mean, I know he's been, training for so long, and it's his life. Like, he's been training since he was a little kid. I remember Josh telling me about him. He's like, this guy, when he's able to fight, is going to be dangerous. And then I remember him coming up through the amateur ranks and stuff like that. Now he's already got 5 pro fights. So, but yeah, man, thank you so much. Like I said, I'm excited. I've called your first 2 fights. I think I'm going to be calling this one as well. So 3 for 3. But if you can't make it out, it's going to be on combatsportsnow.com. Thank you so much. That is Alekzander Hazelwood, man. Thank you for joining me. All right, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
Sorry about that. I had a connection issue right there.